today. Since I have an amazing group of panelists, the entire point of the conversation today is to have a conversation based on their own examples, tools, and how-to methods that are actually working. Now, excuse me, since their biographies are very rich, I have to read some of the parts here today. Joining me in conversation today, we have Marianne Anderson. So please wave as I read your name. She's an engineer with over 25 years of experience in corporations and startup environments. She is the owner of Co-Insights Company, owner of Robo Insights event, and founder of High Five Girls. Madhumalti Sharma, also someone with 25 years of experience in tech industries. Founder and president of nonprofit organization Workshop for Me, EU Code Week ambassador, EU Robotics National Coordinator, and while working in IBM India for 11 years, she has been chairing initiatives like Women in Technology and many, many others. Andy Chang, thank you. Global Product Manager at ABB Robotics. She's responsible for their portfolio for collaborative robots. And prior to her ABB engagement, she worked in various management positions in the industry leading companies in the fields of sales management, supply chain management, and marketing. Ana Maria Stancu. Member of the board of EU Robotics, CEO of Bucharest Robots, startup in Romania, and the founder of RoboHub AI. And local superstar Alexandra Kuljanin, co-founder of IT Girls Bosnia and Herzegovina, communications associate for UNDP Bosnia and Herzegovina. Then prior to that, she was a journalist for several media outlets, and she worked with private sector and many, many NGOs across Bosnia and Herzegovina. Now, before we start with our first question, I want to define two things. So in order to have sort of common ground for today's conversation, we need to have in mind all the different aspects of the word diversity. These include, but are not limited to, gender, race, ethnicity, disability status, nationality, religious affiliation, sexual orientation, and socioeconomic background. Now, why diversity matters? Why do we talk about diversity in science or STEM, if you'd like? And I would like to quote Professor Scott Page, who wrote a book, The Difference, who basically gave a mathematical rationale and logic behind why diversity matters. So he says, when trying to solve complex problems, progress often results from diverse perspectives. That is the ability to see the problem differently. So I would like to start off with Marianne and something that she said in our preparatory meeting, where 30 years ago when she started studying electrical engineering, she was the only female in the class of 32. Now, years later, and so many years in industry, you founded High Five Girls. Was perhaps that lack of representation one of your rationales why you created this for girls from these generation?
Yes, absolutely. Because what I realized now, 25 years after I finished studying electronic engineering, the fact is that there are still very, very, very few girls choosing to study electronics. So that's a big part of why I have created High Five Girls, which is also a non-profit organization. It's also because I've been in management, entrepreneurship, and technology for this many years, and I have more or less only seen men. So I think it's about time that we make all the STEM women that are already present, visible, and then we try to create a new image of what a STEM job is in order to motivate more girls to choose that road. And you mentioned diversity is a lot of things, right? So I can say that High Five Girls, we have chosen to focus on girls because girls are underrepresented within technology. But in reality, this is about personality types. So we try to have old members or old role models and young girls to be role models, and to have different segments represented and different job functions. That's how we see diversity. We would have loved to include boys, but it's just not so easy to communicate that this is for all the girls and those boys who normally would not choose a tech education. So that's why. But yes, that was the starting point.
So when we don't see representation, we might as well do something on our own about it and create an NGO that will be a powerful push.
Yes.
Madhumalti, a question in the same lines goes for you as also somebody who's been in the tech industry for over 25 years. Now, what is your rationale behind Workshop for Me and all the other initiatives that you've been pushing within IBM India?
Yeah, so like we have been thinking about for some time, when you are into technology, when you are doing it, you don't really realize that you are the only girl or you're part of the minority community, so to speak, or those who are not doing it. So yes, my rationale for doing the initiatives which I was doing with IBM was because there was this whole global initiative to get more girls excited about getting into technology and showing them that this is a path. So there was a big focus on getting girls who are in the phase where they're going to decide, should I go into technology or should I do something else instead, to show that as one of the paths to do. So that's what I did while I was with IBM. And a workshop for me happened when I moved to Luxembourg 11 years ago. And since I had been in technology and in my day job, I was doing more management of large implementation projects. I wanted to keep that coding aspect completely there, the geek, the coder, the one who's actually making and creating things. And I wanted my children, who were small at that time, to get interested into technology. So I have a son and a daughter, and I wanted to introduce them to technology and the power that they will be able to use this as a superpower and create and make their things come to life, not just be a consumer, play a game, but actually go ahead and make their own game. So that's what drove me to start Workshop for Me. And I'm very happy that we have been able to launch globally now. People are talking about COVID in bad terms, but for me it has also been very positive. It has ensured that we've been able to take our programs completely online to the rest of the world as well, so that people from everywhere can join and move to the other side, not just be a passive player, but be an active creator and do stuff with technology.
I like that. Taking technology in your own hands. Now, Alexandra, what is the situation with local context if we're talking about Bosnia Herzegovina? For example, why was there a need in particular to create the initiative IT Girls right here in Bosnia Herzegovina?
Thank you, Belma, for that question. So around 5 years ago, when we started off with IT Girls Initiative, basically we wanted to explore this rising field of STEM and IT. To understand our starting point, you also need to understand the context of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So unemployment rate is really high in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and people are leaving. We have a huge brain drain when it comes to young people, especially. So 5 years ago, when a group of young enthusiasts started thinking of a project that might tackle into this and change this situation, we also started exploring IT and STEM. So there's STEM industry, especially IT companies, and this whole field of electrical engineering is rising, and it's among the highest paying occupations in the country. However, the field lacks people, and especially lacks women. when we started researching into it, we also saw that like even at the level of elementary schools, so from 13 years on, girls become less interested in different STEM fields. They become discouraged of mathematics or just exploring. A group of us started this small initiative. We wanted to do a very small scale online research to see what are the attitudes of boys and girls aged 13 to 15 when it comes to STEM. And we also did one training in Sarajevo for girls age of 13 to 15 to see what are their starting points and like would they become more interested in coding if we presented them something which is more visible than what they are learning at school. And from this training for 10 girls, the initiative became a larger scale whole country program that is now supported by 3 UN agencies, UNDP, UNICEF, and UN Women, and the Embassy of Sweden in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And from this one training in Sarajevo, we reached girls all across the country in more rural and more urban areas. And this year, actually, we even started doing online workshops and online trainings. So 5 years after, we see that IT companies are engaging, that international community is engaging, that the girls are more interested in these kinds of activities, and more girls and young women are actually reaching out to our initiative, asking about resources, asking about advice, or even just applying for our workshops. So it's the small steps that I think are really shaping the IT industry in Bosnia and Herzegovina these days.
I absolutely agree, and congratulations on IT Girls. Sometimes it's the small step that launches an avalanche of good things. Now, sort of a bit stepping away a bit from gender, I would like to talk about a very important aspect of socioeconomic differences and what happens if we just don't have same starting points and cannot afford class in robotics or in any IT field that we want to pursue. So Ana Maria, next question actually goes to you, because speaking of inclusive spaces, I would like to mention RoboHub and how you do things there, because it's a space for educational robotics for children, but mostly for children from vulnerable groups and different socio-economic backgrounds. Unmute, you're on mute.
Sorry. Hi. Yes, we actually address these vulnerable groups. I come from a 20-year experience in working with vulnerable groups, but I was working in the field of advocacy and human rights. And I would like to add, for those who don't know, that the UN declared that the access to internet, it's a human right. Because it provides so many alternatives to everyone, and if there's someone who doesn't have access, then it actually affects their human rights. I think a time will come when we will have the same thing with access to technology. I was a huge fan of technology. I was thinking only on the positive side until 3 years ago, when I participated in a debate regarding the influence of new technologies on vulnerable groups. And that's when I understood that we will have a huge problem, because, for example, in Romania, and this is the case for other Southeastern countries, vulnerable groups already have some problems regarding their access to education, for example, or the fact that they reach high school without knowing how to read or write. This is all in statistics, And the problem is that if you add to these problems another one, access to technology, the future will not be bright. And this is a question not only for those vulnerable groups, but for the society at all, because this will become a major social and economical problem. Just think of kids that have no that have no financial means. What will happen to them in 10 years if they don't learn digital skills now? Not necessarily robotics, but programming and understanding algorithms. They won't be able to find a job. And their parents already in these days can't find a job. So basically, we will keep and increase a poverty cycle. This is the main problem that determined us to start RoboHub and this project. And RoboHub per se started in order to share our love for robots, first of all. And second, because robotic classes are very expensive for such families. I mean, they are okay for people working in corporations, but it's more than these people living in Bucharest, for example, and I'm sure it's the same for all capital cities. We wanted to address those kids that don't have the means to go to a robotics club. That's why we started it.
Very important points, and I'll actually get back to you later in the conversation, because I'm very interested in your opinion when it comes to whose responsibility it is to push all those processes, because we need to, as institutions, civil societies, corporations, we all need to sort of work together to prevent that happening, or to create spaces that will allow everyone have the same starting points. Now, Andy, in one of the interviews that you gave earlier this year, it was very interesting for me, the fact that you were speaking about different cultural contexts and different perspective on stigma and on girls and women in particular in the field of ICT. So as someone who has lived half of her life in Sweden and half in China, you made a few interesting points. So I would like for our audience today to hear about those two again. What is the main difference in terms of cultural context, Sweden versus China, or Asia versus Europe, when it comes to women in ICT?
Thank you. So yes, that is a very interesting observation from my personal life. So I'm maybe generalizing. I wouldn't say Sweden and China specifically, but because those are the countries that I've spent half of my life in. But so what I have observed, because I have always worked in technology industries and especially in robotics, which typically is male dominated. But in Sweden, in society, in companies, we talk a lot about gender diversity and overall diversity. And there's a huge debate about whether we should have quotas or not. But in reality, if I just look at my colleagues in robotics, there is much more males than females, especially in leadership positions or in typically males positions, roles such as sales. Whereas when I'm working in China, I would see many more of my colleagues in robotics or technology, whether it's in a leadership position or in sales positions, you will find a lot of females. And I start to ask myself why. And I feel it is really because, first of all, we have to start young. When, let's say, girls, young people are in elementary school or high school, what do they decide what they should study after? Right? I feel in China, in India, in a lot of the Asian countries, equal amount of girls, females are studying engineering subjects because there is no sort of traditional, this should be for boys, this should be for girls. And also the jobs associated with them later. Whereas in the West, and I have spent some time living in the US as well, there is a huge social stigma on what girls should study and what boys should study. And I often ask this question to my friends here in Europe, their daughters, would you consider becoming an engineer or something? And very often they would say, no, I don't because I'm bad at math, or there is this huge stigma. And I think the solution to this are a few things. First of all, we need to make STEM jobs sexy, right? I mean, it's not that girls can't, it's that they don't want to, right? If you're a teenager, what do you want to do? You want to be maybe a key opinion leader, you want to be a model, you want to work in advertising, but maybe they don't necessarily want to become a coder. So we need to make these jobs more attractive for females or, you know, diverse audience. And when I give, for example, speeches to say girls, schoolgirls, and trying to motivate them to join STEM, I would often connect to, for example, you know, technology is all around them. They use TikTok, they use Instagram, they use all kinds of tech in their everyday life, but maybe they don't think about that as tech. So working in tech doesn't have to be boring coder, programmer, or gamer. Everything you do in the future, everything you do and you use will be related to technology. So everybody can be involved in technology.
I think that's definitely going to be one of the quotes from this panel. We need to make jobs in ICT look sexy. Now, going back to Marianne, because I'm very interested in the startup scene, and there's the main finding of the study launched by European Commission says that even though female-owned startups are more likely to be successful, there's a still decrease in leadership and participation. So if we look at the numbers, it's always the male CEOs, or the males are always in the management if we're talking about startups. What, as somebody who has been part of the not only corporate but startup environment as well lately, especially, I would like to ask you about your perspective on this issue.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And if I can just comment on Angie's comment in regards to why is it so different from other countries to Europe in regards to women or girls choosing to study STEM. I think actually we have a fantastic social security system in Denmark and in Sweden as well. And I think that's actually part of it, because if we get a job, if we want to sell flowers or whatever, it's very romantic, it's nice, it's lovely. But if the shop will not work, then we'll get money from the state anyway. So I think that's a big part of it. But of course, there are many things to it. I think, I think societies in general, they need to do something to make it more attractive for girls or women to choose to be entrepreneurs, because it's true, we are around 25% female entrepreneurs in Europe and 75% male entrepreneurs. It has to do a little with the way we're thinking, I think, in general, and now I'm just speaking black and white, because the way girls are thinking or women are thinking is more, we like to plan things before we jump out into things, right? We really want to plan, but when we have the plan ready, we are really, really well prepared and we do well. Whether as boys, they just jump into things, and if it doesn't work, they jump into new things. And I think that's a fundamental way in which we're different. So in that regard, I think we need to make programs that makes it easier for girls to become entrepreneurs. And actually in High Five Girls, when we tell the girls about technologies and we introduce them to coding and virtual reality and whatever, we use the entrepreneurial model. Actually, we teach them to be entrepreneurs because we think girls in general lack the entrepreneurial spirit. That is, it's okay to fail. You probably also have heard about, the girls, they get the big grades, right? But when in the end of the school year, when they have the best grades and you ask them what they want to be, they never say, I want to be CEO, right? But if you have a boy with the lowest grade, they say, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be a CEO or whatever. It's just, the way we're thinking, right? And so we try to teach the girls entrepreneurial spirit. It's okay to fail if you learn something from it. It's okay to jump out into the unknown. And then we also teach them to pitch, because we also know that for many girls, it's not so easy to stand up and say what you think. So these are three things that we think are important to teach girls.
So it's a plethora of different things. It's not only about being CEO, but it's also has to do with your mentality and your confidence, which is also being built.
Yes.
Now, if we talk about successful ways of how do we approach diversity, Madhumalti, you mentioned in the preparatory conversations that we had the power of collaboration, and I really love that, because you said just by having one simple conversation and one new networking opportunity, and when we link, beautiful things happen. And then we're creating spaces for others to join in. So can you tell us more about, for example, in particular, your experience with powerful collaborations?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of things which Marianne said make so much of sense, especially about this aspect of wanting to fit in, that girls have, wanting to do something which is within the trend and not being left out or the only girl who is a geek or trying to do this. So this is an important aspect as well. I'm happy to see that there are several competitions or global challenges which have come up. One of them that I want to name is the Technovation Challenge, which is a mobile app development challenge, which includes an entrepreneurial aspect to it. So for the older girls, they not only have to build an app that is aligned to one of the sustainable development goals, but they also need to prepare a pitch video about it. They have to write a business plan for it. How are they going to sell it? So all of these aspects come into it. So that is one form of collaboration where we are going ahead and tagging on or working with an existing idea. Other collaborations that we've been able to do is with Digital Luxembourg, for example. We were able to make coding sexy and fun, like Andy mentioned, by taking it into the cinema hall. This was pre-COVID times, and we did a session in the cinema hall. So the kids and their families came in with popcorn and drinks, and they learned different aspects of technology. They saw robots, so we collaborated with the University of Luxembourg that actually showed them different drones and robots and how to operate it and make that happen. So it's not only making it look like something fun and something entertaining and something which would be nice to do, but also collaborating with all the different actors in order to be able to make it happen. And as we speak, Marianne and I have also had a conversation to collaborate with High Five Girls and workshop for me to see how it can happen. I met Anna Maria during the European Robotics Week earlier. So it's so nice to have everybody come together as well. So I feel that having conversations like this makes it possible to take it further than just talking about something, but creating a project out of it and taking it out to the world. So collaborations are definitely very powerful.
And not only Madhumalti, but all of our panelists are open to collaboration. So if anybody from the audience after this conversation today wants to share their own initiative or join the existing ones, I'm sure that if you connect either with them or European Robotics Week, that you will get a positive answer. Talking about so collaboration and networking is most certainly one of the powerful tools how to tackle this issue. Now, Alexandra, I want to ask you about also an attractive way of creating spaces for inclusion. I want to talk about this game that I don't know much very about, which I'm very excited to hear more about. So why did you decide to use gamifying as one of the methods to make STEM more sexy to girls or more attractive to girls and women?
Before tapping into the game itself, which is currently in the process of development, I'd like to briefly mention also collaboration and entrepreneurship spirit, which is very important when you're talking about STEM, because as Marianne said, it's very much needed to teach girls bravery. And that's something that we actually had pointed out from our very first training. Girls said that boys always take over and that they do not feel safe to have this space to explore coding or anything that's related to tech because they feel like boys take over their space. And that's why we decided to mainly open our trainings and workshops, these spaces for learning to girls. And I have to mention all our workshops are for free, and they are also reaching out to more vulnerable girls or the ones that cannot really afford to pay some expensive workshops and trainings that are available on the market. So that's very important. And from the very beginning, we wanted to include entrepreneurship in our training. So we had pitching sessions at the end of the trainings where girls were basically presenting their projects and what they came up with. And that's something that we were building for the past 5 years. This year we had our very first online training, which was very much intertwined with entrepreneurship. So alongside learning some basic HTML and CSS and JavaScript skills, we also included several modules on entrepreneurship, building business plan, business model canvas, etc. So all this thinking and working with girls of different age brought up an idea of basically building or developing entrepreneurship simulation game. This is nothing new at the global market. There are similar entrepreneurship simulation games. However, they lack some elements. So in our game, we wanted to include, because Bosnian language is gender sensitive, we wanted to include gender sensitive language so that every girl that plays the game feels that the game is created for her. That's one thing. We wanted to include different roles in the business that they are developing. So they will be able to choose a role from CEO to basically just a developer or a junior or a senior back end, front end. So, it really depends on the roles, and they can choose the gender of that role. Also, we wanted to make the game as inclusive as we could. So we thought about icons that represent different either disabilities or different races or just different backgrounds of the players. So this is one of the things that we are very much looking forward to testing. As I said, we are currently developing it, and we believe it will be ready for testing from the beginning of the next year. And the game itself will be focusing very much on the entrepreneurship. So it's not just going to be coding. We want the players. Of course, there will be boys that will be playing the game. Our primary target group is the girls and young women. So the game will be targeting them mostly, but we also welcome boys and young men on board. The game will have the elements of building your own startup in a different field. We want to start from 3 fields. It's going to be IT, mechanical engineering, and most probably tourism. So that's something where you can basically decide to build your startup with it, and then learn about different processes of building a startup, of different phases of wins or failures. And this is something where we also want to encourage girls to try and fail as many times as they can, to basically take some lessons forward and to dare to build their own actual real startups in the real world by learning from these virtual ones.
Just so you know, Marianne was doing this the whole time when you said spaces to fail. It is personally one of the most important things for me was that all the people that I've been working with who were my bosses always allowed me to have the space to make mistakes. That's such an important part of sort of formative years in your first jobs, etc. Now, Andy, my next question goes to you, because in our preparatory meeting, we did stick to this diversity umbrella, but talked only about gender. Now, if we talk about diversity, you said the management of your company had quite a good how-to method to engage employees and start creating spaces for diversity. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, I would love to. I think this is a great initiative from our company. So ABB is a multinational company with 150,000 employees. So the fact that the top leadership of our company have launched this global diversity and inclusion strategy for 2030, I think it's a great sign and shows that the company is going towards this direction. And within ABB Robotics specifically, we have started this, I think a great initiative, which is an internal ideation. So it's a competition as well. So all employees can pitch their proposals on how we as ABB Robotics can foster an environment of diversity and inclusion. So everybody can pitch their ideas, their proposals on project that we can start. And this is not, gender is one, LGBTQ plus is one, culture, inclusion. There are several subtopics where you can pitch your ideas in, and then everybody in the company can vote, like pressing like on Facebook. And in the end, the ideas with the highest votes will be implemented by management into concrete projects. So I think this is a really great way combining top down, so involvement from the management, and also bottom up grassroots ideas of every employee. And together with this initiative, we have also employees who are willing to share their own experience from diversity, from their different cultural or gender backgrounds on their own stories. And our top management has been very engaged in commenting on this. And I think this is a really great way to show as a company to act as show an example that they care, that this is important for them. And I think this is a great step in that direction, because I think what all of you are sharing, that my fellow panelists, is great. And I really love how you have developed these free tools for girls to learn how to become entrepreneurs, learn to fail, learn to be brave. This is great. And then from the hiring, the company side, they also need to make, I would say, effort into making the workplace or the engineering companies more diverse. And from my personal experience, I would say in the beginning, I was always the only female in whether it's customer meetings or internal meetings in robotics. But now the things are starting to change. I mean, just in my personal team, we have more females than males, and we all come from different countries with different backgrounds. And we have shown inside the company to deliver that we are very creative and we deliver strong results. So we are, I would say, a great example showing other people that, hey, the power of diversity, and can inspire other teams in the company to dare to be more diverse. And I have other fellow manager colleagues who ask me how I was able to hire more females, because, very typically when you are recruiting for an engineering position, the recruiter will come back and say, sorry, we have 0 female applicants, or very few. But you have to push them, because this is a status quo. But you have to think, how can we get more females in? And one thing I encourage hiring managers to look at is to look at how you have written this job description. If you write a job description only listing the very technical requirements, then typically females are more conservative. If they don't fulfill every single one of the checklists, they might not apply. Whereas a male, maybe they fulfill 30%, but they will apply anyway. So how about changing how you write a job ad to talk more about the person, the personality, the type of team player that you want, or somebody who is creative rather than the technical requirements. So I think, that is one tip I can share with everyone.
I love it. I will definitely steal the idea, copy the idea of the ideation. I love it. I think it's a great way for management to step up and actually send a very strong message and create space for creating really diverse teams. But also this has a lot to do with one thing that Ana Maria already mentioned, which different roles, different people in society. For example, as Andy said, corporations have to also do something. Civil society also has to do something. We all have to work together in order to achieve this. I would also like to, before I go to you, Ana Maria, and ask about the role, who is actually responsible, who has the biggest responsibility when it comes to impacting true diversity. I would like to point out an elephant in the room. Before we started this panel, we realized that this panel is not accessible for people with hearing impairment. So, for example, my friend texted me 10 minutes prior to the panel, and she's a person with disability or hearing impairment, and she could not attend the panel today. So me and all the panelists and the organizers, and this does not come from the place of criticism, but love and creating inclusive spaces as we go, we decided that right after this session, we will try to make it into in the post-production, we will put the titles and make this video actually accessible for everybody else who wants to listen to it afterwards. Ana Maria, who is the biggest, who is the responsible person in any society? Who has the biggest burden, let's say, when it comes to diversity? We cannot just make it happen. Who do we need to lobby? Who needs to take step up their game and take responsibility of making a true diverse culture in STEM?
It's the government. I told you I come from a background of advocacy, and usually because I worked for 20 years in this, whenever I see a problem, my main focus is how do you fix it? And you can have projects initiated by NGOs, you can have projects initiated by corporations or any other stakeholder. But bottom line, if you want to reach the education to every kid in the country, you need a measure taken by the government and made in school. That's the only way you can reach vulnerable groups. My dream, for example, is to have robo-hubs in every county, in every of the 41 counties in Romania, so that kids can actually see robots and so that they can understand them. When we had the robotics caravan, you can't imagine the joy of the kids from very little villages who have never seen VR glasses or a moving robot or a microbit or something that normally other kids get access to. And the thing is, they will not have access to this unless it's done by the government in a very systemic way. What we did in Romania, we initiated a coalition for digital education. We were advocating like 1 year before the pandemics. Unfortunately, we weren't heard by the Ministry of Education. And guess what? Now the pandemics caught us with, well, I'm not going to say that the expression in Romania, but it caught us very unprepared. So we have teachers who don't know how to use tablets. We have kids who don't have tablets and don't know how to use them. We have kids who don't know how to use a mouse or to write a Word or an Excel sheet. You cannot do all of this unless it's very unitary and systematic. NGOs are very good at providing pilots and giving the methodology further, but you cannot, and for example, many NGOs work project-based. And I have to tell you that I'm very tired of always begging for money for the projects. Now digital education became a little bit more trendy, so there were companies offering money for this, but usually it's one shot, you do a project and that's it. And it's very hard to do anything that will have any medium-term impact just by doing a project. We had a project in which we went to 25 schools in the rural area and taught the kids and the teachers how to teach ITNC. But that was just 1 year, the project ended, and now basically those teachers and teachers from all the other schools in Romania have no idea how to teach a new class that was introduced, and it was very well that it was introduced in secondary school. It's ITNC. Only the ministry only did training for this class for 1 year, and then the subsequent years, 6th and 7th grade, they didn't do anything. So basically, you have some teachers who need to teach something, and they don't have the means. Nobody trained them. They've never done this before. And I can go and do some trainings, which we did for some teachers, but at the end of the day, if you want to reach all teachers and all kids, you need to do it on a national level for everyone.
To be very systematic, I absolutely know what you're talking about. It's the same situation in Southeast Europe, especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina as well. Once the project is done, the initiative is done. Luckily, there are women like you, there are people who are pushing, who are doing this on voluntary basis, who are trying to, what Mathumalti said, use all of their networks just to make things happen, even though when you don't have the funds. So I do believe that small steps and big humans like you people really can make a difference. It is a painful process and a slow process, but it is happening. I also agree with the comment on the governments who need to actually push this process. We have one question from the audience who said, excellent conversation, how to reach out to girls in the Middle East and Africa. Does anybody want to give me their 2 cents on it? So Alexandra and Humalti after.
Well, just 2 cents, as you said. There are different initiatives in the Middle East and Africa working with girls as well. I recently met a girl from Nigeria who is an IT engineer herself, and she started off an initiative. I forgot the name, but I can surely Google it and go back to this conversation, or if you want to reach out to IT girls, and I'll send you links. Also in the Middle East, I believe almost every country at the country level has at least one initiative, especially in Africa. Africa is a big continent, as we know. There are lots of things happening in Nigeria and in South Africa, especially. Reaching out to girls and using a very similar methodology to what we're using here in Europe. I think it's a global problem, right? It's not specific to one country or one continent. When we look globally, I believe statistics are that 70%, it's a male-dominated industry, and 70% of employees in IT are men, while 30 are women. So it's the same for Americas, Africa, Europe, Asia, maybe a little bit less in Asia because of the expansion of technology.
Mathumalti.
Sure. So, yeah, I just wanted to mention one of the advantages of being online and being global is also this, right? That it is possible to access the programs from wherever you are. Just to give you an example, for EU Code Week, there were so many events that were organized all over Europe, but we had participants from different parts of the world. So from Canada, from Africa, from Dubai. And I'm talking about our event, which we did specifically to teach girls how to build their first mobile app. It was run by a preteen girl herself, and there were girls from all the different countries who joined, and all the programs with initiatives like EU Code Week are run for free, and it doesn't say that you have to be in a particular country to join. So there was a featured list of featured activities which was part of the EU Code Week website, which talked about events which were accessible to everybody, which gave a link for people to join online, and it didn't have any such criteria. So this is one example, but there are several others, where a lot of things are happening online now. So people from Africa and the Middle East can definitely join them.
Hopefully, Rasim, you got an answer to your question. Now it's already 4:50, which means it is our final question round. And I'm so sorry because I didn't have such interesting panelists for a while now, and I have at least 50 questions for each and every one of you. We are fully aware, as well as our audience, that 1 hour speaking about diversity is not much. But as we already concluded, the main point or the next step after this conversation is linking with each other. So I will make sure, so this is a promise to the organizers, to gather all of these resources that you've been talking about, so we can maybe place them online on Facebook groups and everything else. Now, as I believe the personal storytelling is perhaps the most powerful tool, I will ask you a question, the last question, which is the same for all five of you, which usually people pose in the beginning of every conversation. Now, I will ask it at the end, because I want to leave our audience with a powerful storytelling that would actually push them to do STEM. So what got you into the world of STEM? Who wants to go first? Andy.
Sure, I can go first. You know, I actually really like telling my own story, because I think it kind of connects to what we have discussed before. You know, why are certain jobs associated with females and not? I would like to thank my parents, first of all, for me being in STEM, because growing up, sometimes I think my parents raised me as a boy, but then that would be confirming the stereotype. In reality, is they raised me to not have any boundaries. So why? Imagine this experiment. You place 20 kids on a desert island, no adults, the kids from different cultures. Would they grow up with different bias on what boys should do, what girls should do, what, I don't know, Muslims should do, what Christians should do? No, they would. Bias is built into kids by us, we adults. So we as parents or role models or leaders, we need to first act ourselves without prejudice. Right? Everybody is equal. Everybody has equal potential. And this is how my parents raised me. So I never thought about what boys should do or girls should do. I just did what I thought was interesting. You know, I was coding. Okay, I was playing with Barbie, but I was coding. I was playing games. I did all these things. And this is how I would like to raise my kids, and how I encourage other people to raise their kids. Do not put any limitations or any kind of social stigma on them. Just encourage them to try everything, and yeah, let them decide themselves.
I love that takeaway. Mathumalti.
Sure. So I'll be happy to share. I'm raising both a son and a daughter, and like Andy said, it's not as if I'm raising them differently or doing something, you know, specific for my daughter or for my son or anything like that. And like Andy said, when I'm changing the hard disk of my computer, since I'm techie myself, I got my daughter to help me to do it. So I think there's a lot of responsibility on parents, so to speak, that if there is something to do with a screwdriver or something which are typically thought of as, you know, or maybe change the light bulb or something like that, you know, things which you typically think you would get a man or a boy to do, get your daughters involved in that. That is one. The other thing I feel is very important, since all of us are running initiatives, is to involve the mums and the parents. So I highly encourage running events for mums and girls, and we ran one for International Women's Day where we got the mums and the girls to code. It was very successful. The mums, when they see their daughters to do this as well, they're able to understand it better and they understand the value. And the other thing is to do things as a family. So as part of EU Code Week this year, we did a family event on encryption, and it was again good, because the moment you involve the family, everybody is able to get involved and realize what the benefits of STEM are. Then you're not just going after one person, because the audience is not just the girl who is not so interested in STEM, but the moment you convince the whole family, you know, you're going to get people running and, you know, saying that I want to get involved in it and I want to do this as well. So yeah, these are my tips, so to speak.
Thank you so much, Mathumalti. Ana Maria, let's not only blame parents, let's talk governments again. What would be your takeaway, and why did you decide to step in STEM years ago?
Well, actually, I never wondered this. I just always believed that I can do whatever I put my mind to. But now listening to other reason, I realized that actually, I think family, it's indeed important. In my family, both my parents are electricians. And since I was 6 or 7, I was using the whatever, I don't know how it's called in English, but I was doing wiring, and I knew what parallel and serial connections are. And to me, it was always, I never had a difference like this is something men should do or women should do, because both my parents were doing it and they were good at it. Now I realize that indeed it's very important, but it's also how the state, coming back to the government, it can also help. I got a question, why in Romania we don't have the gender gap in IT as high as in other European states. And one of the reasons we kept asking ourselves in Romania, why is this difference? And one of the most obvious answers is because of communism. Because communism didn't make any, they didn't make a difference between men and women. In communism, everyone had to work, whichever job you got. And of course, you didn't only get women's job, women were also working like what we consider now to be men's job. And actually, I think the future children saw this in their family, like in my family, but it's probably because of communists. That's why my mother was an electrician. So in the end, whether we like it or not, it's the family and the society that shapes us. And again, it's a systemic, we can do it just in our family, but once you get the kid out there, I have twins and I treat my kids the same. I show both of them the same thing. I have a boy and a girl, and the minute I got them into kindergarten and school, the girl started wearing pink and wanted all sorts of girl stuff, which she didn't see at home. And she was exposed at home at the same technical stuff. So basically, it's also the society that that shapes us and tells us subconsciously what to do.
I agree. There's nothing wrong with wearing pink, but it's very important just to emphasize that it's not only for girls and that you have every other option that you want. But it is true. For example, if you take a look at Yugoslavia, we had better participation of women studying ICT fields rather than today. So the thing that you said about communism sort of stuck with me. Now, Marianne, 30 years ago, what
many years ago.
Engineering.
Actually, I have to say that I studied languages in the gymnasium. So in primary school, I had an idea that physics and mathematics was not easy for me. And whether it was myself who thought it or it was my teacher who communicated it to me, I wasn't sure. Maybe it was a society, I don't know. But anyway, I chose to study languages. So I studied German and English and Latin and Spain and whatever. But then having been together with a lot of girls for 3 years, you know, because studying languages was more a girl thing at that time. And I got a little tired of all the girls, you know, 23 girls in the class and 2 boys. So I said to myself, I want to do something else. I want to do something with the lamps blinking or something else. And what my parents gave me was confidence and self-belief. So whatever you say you can do it. So I choose to study electrical engineering. What I didn't realize was that there were only boys in that class. But I have also been brought up to say, like my parents say, if you do A, you also do B. And that's just how it is. So that's just, you know, that was my story. Yeah, strange.
Love it. Finishing off in with local, since we're the hosts. Alexandra, what is your story and one takeaway for the end of this conversation?
What brought me to IT Girls is basically I'm a huge digital believer, digital literacy believer, and as someone mentioned, before in this discussion, all the jobs will be techie jobs in the future if they aren't already now. So what got me there was believing in this digital transformation, and what kept me hooked is all these girls that we met from all different parts of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And mind you, we were in Drvar, Srebrenica, Doboj, Prijedor, Banja Luka, Sarajevo, Mostar. So locals will understand it's a quite variety of cities and like more urban, more rural areas, and like all the stories that we got from there are I didn't know this is this interesting. Because we taught them that they can see the results of their code immediately. Like when they write something, they can click and then see what they actually made with that code. So that kept me in this initiative. I keep volunteering for it. Another thing, or one takeaway to finish it off, is dare to do mighty things. And we work with schools, we work with ministries of education, we work with IT companies, we organize free workshops, we work with all the different stakeholders. But in the end, it comes to you. It really, I would say to every single girl in this world, and every single person who doubts in themselves, dare to do mighty things. And whatever you consider mighty, just do it. If you fail, doesn't matter, try it again.
I love that. I'm not even going to close this conversation. That's going to be the closure of this conversation. First of all, you fantastic group of women, thank you so much. It's been a great honor and a very, on a very personal level, you have been so inspiring to me. Hopefully our audience got the answers that they wanted or unpacked some of the things that they wanted. So we have two promises at the end of this conversation. One is for me and all of us to share resources on YouTube and every European Robotics Week platform that is online. And two, we will in post-production title this panel so people with hearing impairment can actually okay, Alexandra, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm reading the chat. So we will create titles in the post-production so it can be accessible to everyone. Have a great week, everybody. Good luck to organizers, and thank you. My panelists, you're wonderful. Thank you so much. Whenever you come to Bosnia and Herzegovina, you're welcome to stay with me and my dog.
We'd love to. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Halo, ciao.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.